In the alpha version of the game, the Silence Cathedral is visited much earlier than the retail version, so when Raziel enters the Sanctuary of the Clans, he's immediately able to progress through to the tomb area beyond. The outside of the tomb building itself has a similar layout, but is much more ornately decorated than that seen in retail, with a more detailed weathered look to the brickwork and several reliefs high above. The external outcroppings are not present, and there are no bars over the door. The corridor encountered upon entering the tomb is also much shorter than that seen in retail. The main tomb chamber is somewhat simpler than other versions, and there are no names or individual designs. Interestingly, there are actually 7 caskets here, where Malix is missing in the retail version. The spectral drop in this chamber doesn't function correctly and crashes the game if stood in the centre of the room. Underneath, the Tomb Guardian sub-boss is essentially an ordinary Turalim enemy. He has no dialogue, no revival powers, and grants no ability. In this version, the Soul Reaver itself grants the Force Projectile ability, although there's also a separate ability called Force for when barehanded. The side passage which leads back up has no enemies and no grate at the top. Interestingly, one build has the climbing wall textures replaced by Zephanim webbing, suggesting this may have been considered as a climbing texture at one time. The block shot to progress does not require the use of projectiles. Instead, it has a platform from which it can be pushed. Moving through to the chapel passages, the room straight ahead at the fort contains the interestingly useless bonus 1 room in retail. In the retail version, it's covered by a stained glass window of an armoured woman riding an armoured bird, presumably representing a Valkyrie, and only contains 2 enemies and an Eldritch recharge on a distinctive chessboard floor. In the alpha, the room and its flooring are not present. Instead, this is the placement for the deleted Sunlight Forge, one of the more complete forges in the alpha. The chapel room itself on the right fork is much smaller in the alpha than in retail, with some differently placed textures. There are no side doors in the area, and the block is again rather plain. Interestingly, the alpha features a Turalim and a Melkahim here, where the retail has only the Turalim. This is also another area with some funky spectral colours and effects. Jumping up through the alcove in the middle led to the next level, the Drowned Abbey.